Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. Hope you had a good weekend. And we have a lot to cover today. We'll do our best in the first hour to cover some of the issues in the news. Of course, the FBI being one of the most important. Even as we came to the broadcast on Friday, we mentioned a little bit about the fact that there was an attempt announced by James Comey, the FBI director, to reopen the investigation into the email scandal surrounding Hillary Clinton. We will certainly spend a lot of time talking about that and also get into what is happening in the election as well. We'll see if this has any kind of impact on the eventual election of either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. And in some respects, what is unfolding now over this last week may be irrelevant for a lot of people, because the best estimates are almost 22 million people now have voted. The estimates were in the more than 10 million category. Now some people think more than 20 million have already voted, which in some respects is convenient, but also illustrates one of the questions we've raised around this table in the past. Any kind of October surprise or any final 11th hour revelation sometimes doesn't have any impact, because a lot of people have already voted. And so we'll talk about that. We'll get into a little more of, if we have time in this hour, a discussion of some of these voter irregularities. We have a number of people over the age of 100, some of them over the age of any age that people would ever be alive that have voted, which I think illustrates the fact that some of them have died, and yet people are still using their name to vote for that. And then we also have phase 3 of the WikiLeaks dump, and so we'll get into some of that as well. So there is a lot to cover. In the second hour, we're going to kind of change topics a little bit, and that is Nitsana Darshan-Leitner is with a law center in Israel. She has been very involved in defending various victims of terror, and is using this strategy to try to fight terrorism in a very effective way, and that is to bankrupt various terrorist organizations. So she will be in studio with us as she drops by, and so we'll change topics a little bit. But again, one of those topics we've covered so often here on Point of View is how to address the war on terror. Some of it can be addressed militarily. Some of it can be addressed through a variety of other factors, whether it's hacking emails, disrupting terrorist cells, dealing with the financial income that comes to terrorists, and much more. So these are some conversations we'll have in the second hour. But let's get back to the FBI here. Wall Street Journal saying that the Federal Bureau of Investigation revealed on Friday, as we've talked about, that the FBI would reopen its investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server and her handling of classified material. This happened, of course, just a mere 11 days before the election itself. Mr. Comey cited new evidence, but of course raises questions, as we would say, about the procedures at the FBI, and of course questions about the Democratic candidate, which may be reflected now in the next couple of polls that come out as well. In a letter to Congress, Mr. Comey wrote that in connection with an unrelated case, the FBI has learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation. Went on to say that the FBI cannot yet assess whether or not this material may be significant, but of course, presumably these new emails are significant enough for him to have done something which, as we've heard all through the talking head shows this weekend, are unprecedented. Maybe a little bit of a background on some of this as well. This surfaced from a completely unrelated investigation of Mr. Weiner. Anthony Weiner, former member of Congress and the estranged husband of Huma Abedin, is connected in a kind of a bizarre way. Huma, of course, has been one of the closest aides to Hillary Clinton. But, of course, she has been married to an individual that, how do we say this, has some interesting proclivities with texting and sexting and all of the rest. And so, of course, they've had his email and they've had his laptop. And I think they may have known this for a while, but maybe not. But the bottom line is that they are going to now, because they were able to get a search warrant to investigate the 650,000 emails of the longtime aide Huma Abedin, some of which, or most of which, are on that laptop. Now, you got to understand that when you go into these investigations, you get a search warrant. And whether you go to a door and go in and investigate whether or not there's contraband or drugs or weapons or whatever in a home, or whether you get a search warrant to now look at his laptop, as soon as they began to find emails that had to do with state.gov and Hillary. Whatever she called it, .com or whatever that was, they began to realize, wait a minute, we're in here looking for sexting, maybe even pornographic pictures, various kinds of correspondence, so that we can make our case for the sexting that Anthony Weiner was doing. So they went back and got another search warrant, which, if indeed they're looking at classified information, this is the same problem that was dealt with before, and that is some of this may be classified at such a high level that only certain people in the United States could be allowed to look at those. And so this is a investigation that will not end by November 8th. And so there will be a big question mark over the head of Hillary Clinton. If for no other reason, then there are certainly some questions that could be raised, but they are questions that certainly will not be answered by a week from tomorrow. This, in some respects, reminds people of Watergate, which I thought is kind of interesting. There have been some people doing some comparisons between, after all, Hillary Clinton, at that time her name was Hillary Rodham, was actually on the committee that was investigating Richard Nixon. So you have that obvious connection, but also Richard Nixon recording various things said in the Oval Office, Hillary Clinton getting a separate email. You can go all the way down the list. But the point that needs to be made is that Richard Nixon was able to cover up Watergate in the 1972 election, but that cover-up eventually unraveled so that by 1974, he actually stepped down. Otherwise, he faced impeachment hearings. So this is something that will be reminiscent if indeed Hillary Clinton is elected and becomes the next president. She will be the president-elect, but also be under investigation, could even be indicted. We don't know all the details as that unfolds. If, on the other hand, Donald Trump wins the election right now, which looks more like a long shot, then Hillary Clinton still would be investigated, and this would play itself out. There have been a lot of irregularities. A lot of people have said, well, this is without precedent. This happens 11 days before all of the voting takes place, and yet there have been people that have pointed out over time that, no, we've had a few other indictments that have come down, an indictment coming down, interestingly enough, to an associate of George Herbert Walker Bush. And at that time, Bill Clinton said, well, that's an issue. And an indictment against Ted Stevens when he was running for Senate in the state of Alaska and lost. I mean, you have some examples like that. But this one is also without precedent. You have Cheryl Mills, who had been merely an assistant to Hillary Clinton, who was first of all given immunity and then actually listed as her lawyer. She's not. But then that gave her attorney-client privilege. So we've had a lot of irregularities, a lot of things without any precedent. Welcome to election 2016. We'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Today is October 31st, and most people know it as Halloween, but it also has long been known as the Festival of the Dead. The Celtic tribes and their priests, the Druids, celebrated this day as a marker for the change from life to death. November 1st was the beginning of the New Year, so Halloween or Samhain was like New Year's Eve. It was both a time of death and new beginnings. The young would wander the countryside disguised in scary masks, carrying turnips carved into scary jack-o'-lanterns to frighten off ghosts and goblins. They believed that the veil between the living and the dead was believed to be the thinnest at this time of year, and therefore one could more readily communicate with a loved one in spirit. I might mention that Deuteronomy 18 warns us not to be involved in any activity that includes divination. The term Halloween is shortened from All Hallows Even, as it was the evening before All Hallows Day, also known as All Saints' Day. Pope Gregory moved the day from May 13th to November 1st. This made Halloween the eve of the celebration. November 1st was All Hallows Mass, and October 31st became All Hallows Even. Today, Halloween has become one of the most celebrated holidays. We're told that people spend more on decorations at Halloween than any other holiday except Christmas. And often the Halloween celebrations have included more and more occultic activity. Christians have two options: to ignore Halloween or to provide an alternative. I might mention that many churches now provide a fall fun festival. So I hope you will think about what you will do today. Don't just go with the flow. Make an informed decision about what you'll do on Halloween. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
If you'd like to join a conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Trying to give you just a little bit of a perspective on this FBI investigation. It will take place over the course of the election and thereafter, but will it have an impact? We'll look at that issue in just a minute. But I think it's always helpful to recognize that some of you that are younger listening to this broadcast may not have the history, and even some of us that are older who don't have great memories need to remember what happened in the past. And some people have actually said this situation with Hillary Clinton reminds them of payback. And I referred to it briefly, but this piece in the Washington Examiner by Paul Bedard is a good example of that, because 24 years ago, as former President George Herbert Walker Bush was surging back against challenger Bill Clinton, this was again in the 1992 election, a special prosecutor raised new charges against Bush in the Iran-Contra probe, prompting Clinton to claim that he was running against a culture of corruption. Many Republicans claim that the indictment made by special prosecutor against former Reagan-era Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger the week before the 1992 election cost President Bush a second term. The indictment later was thrown out, but it challenged George Herbert Walker Bush's claim that he did not know about a controversial arms for hostage deal that dogged the Reagan-Bush administration. Again, for some of you that are younger, in the 1980s, there was what was called the Iran-Contra scandal. And so the argument was made that this did not involve decision-making at the level of George Herbert Walker Bush, who is the vice president, or Ronald Reagan,
But Ronald Reagan later apologized that he did not know about that, and whether he was kept from all that information or not, we could have as a discussion for another day. But back in 1992, it was this 11th hour indictment that most likely gave Bill Clinton the election over George Herbert Walker Bush, simply because, as they had on this particular note here, quote, Secretary Weinberger's note clearly shows that President Bush had not been telling the truth when he says he was out of the loop, unquote. And so Bill Clinton also added, quote, it demonstrates that President Bush knew and approved of President Reagan's secret deal to swap arms for hostages, unquote. Again, we can have all sorts of debates about what they do or did not know, but it is a little bit striking to a number of individuals that you see some similarity between the 1992 election and the 2016 election in terms of the indictment. A lot of people have seen a lot of similarities between the 1972 election, which, of course, was the cover-up of Watergate, and the 2016 election. It is interesting because in a recent poll, 45% of those in this particular poll that was done, which was one that actually included a fairly significant number of people, 45% say emails were worse than Watergate, 61% fear a probe will drag into the White House, something we've talked about just a moment ago. Let me just also maybe answer one other question you might have, and then we'll move on to the election. I'd love to get your comments in our second half hour here. And the first is to also ask the question, why is it that, first of all, you have FBI Director James Comey, who said we're not going to indict, and pretty much ended the discussion in July in some ways, and then now here in October reopens it. And Michael Mukasey actually has written a very good piece. He served as the U.S. Attorney General for a number of years, and before that was a U.S. District Judge in New York, and has a lot of inside information. It's a fairly long piece, so I will just read a couple of questions, then issues that I think might solve some of the questions that we have. And that is, he talks about the fact that in July, FBI Director James Comey announced that, quote, no reasonable prosecutor, unquote, would seek to charge her with a crime, although Hillary Clinton had classified information on a private, non-secure server, which is at least a misdemeanor under one statute, although she was extremely careless in her handling of classified information that was exposed to hacking by hostile foreign nations, which is a felony under another statute, and apparently had caused the destruction of emails, which also is a felony under two other statutes. He then told Congress repeatedly the investigation into her handling of the emails was closed. So if you're keeping score there at home, the issue of actually sending classified information is a misdemeanor. The extreme carelessness of it was a felony. And the destruction of emails is a felony under two different statutes. Nevertheless, with actually no sense of irony, you have James Comey announcing back in July that we are not going to call for an indictment, and that's the end of the discussion. To put this in perspective, Michael Mukasey points out that members of the military have been imprisoned and dishonorably discharged for mishandling far less information, and prosecutions for criminal negligence are commonplace and entirely permissible, yet the Attorney General, whose decisions they were and who was available to her through various material, simply disappeared. So the question you might have is, why did James Comey do this? And Michael Mukasey makes a very good point. He said after disclosure of those emails, the president said during an interview that he thought Hillary Clinton should not be criminally charged because there was no evidence that she had intended to harm the nation's security, a showing required under none of the relevant statutes. Whether you intended harm or not, if you were careless, that's enough. And so as indefensible, Michael Mukasey says, as his legal reasoning might have been, his practical reasoning is apparent. If Mrs. Clinton was in criminal risk for communicating on her non-secure system, so was he. The point is that if indeed you could indict, charge, and prosecute Hillary Clinton, realistically, you could also indict the President of the United States. Maybe not while he's president, but after he leaves office. In other words, if she was guilty, by definition, he is guilty. Now, this is possible as we start thinking about these 650,000 emails that the FBI will be looking at on Mr. Weiner's laptop, because when you start talking about some of this, you recognize that there will probably a number that are very definitely coming from the State Department. Many of them probably were classified. And in the midst of that, since that laptop was not destroyed, here we go again. Remember, they were allowed to destroy some of the laptops and BlackBerries and, all that kind of stuff. That one was not destroyed. It's in somebody's hands. By the way, I also found out that one of the laptops under the email investigation that was supposed to be destroyed was not. And this is another whole issue as well. We don't want to try to get too much into the head of James Comey. But here is an individual that perhaps was tired of all the criticism he's been receiving from not only those who are Republicans, but also from in his department. Ed Klein, who's been on this program with us many times before, reports that his wife had said to other individuals that James Comey was tired of seeing all the resignations on his desk from FBI agents who were simply tired of all of this. We, of course, mentioned the other day that Mr. Napolitano, who's a commentator on Fox, talked about the fact that there are people in the FBI that he's talked to that said that the morale in the FBI is lower than it's ever been since the time of Watergate. And so finally, I think he recognized, I've already lost one group of possible supporters. I'm going to lose the other ones now, because up until now, the Democrats have pointed to him time and time again of how responsible he was, and he gave a clean bill of health to Hillary Clinton. And, of course, he had to know that when he sent this letter out on Friday, what the response might be. And if you want to talk about somebody who feels very alone now, it would certainly be James Comey, because now even the people that talked about him in glowing terms now are criticizing him unrelentlessly, matter of fact. So that is kind of where we stand with the FBI scandal. We come back, I want to get some of your phone calls, and I want to spend just a few minutes talking about how the election is shaping up. We have some new polls. We have some information about early voting. And interestingly enough, early voting is off the charts in Texas and in a few other states like Georgia and Arizona, Wisconsin, a few like that. But early voting has decreased in a lot of states like California, North Carolina, Ohio, Colorado, Michigan, some others. So we'll talk about what that might mean and how we might have a little better understanding of what will happen the night of November 8th. Let's take a break, though, and if you'd like to join the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. If you'd like to read a little bit more, we've posted some of this. We have the FBI investigation, have some things about Clinton Inc., which we have yet to get to, and then, of course, in our second hour, we'll talk about how to block terror funding, how to bankrupt terrorists, and how to use some of these financial instruments to begin to fight the war on terror. So we've got a lot to cover, but if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. As you visit the website, don't forget there's lots of great articles there, my commentary on Halloween, as well as information about our cruise in Alaska, which will take place in August. All of it's available at the website, pointofview.net. We'll come back and take some phone calls right after this.
Imagine it's January 2021. The president elected in 2016 has served 4 years. Tell me, what does the Supreme Court look like with maybe 2, 3, even 4 justices named by this next resident of the Oval Office? Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? Depending on the results in November, 4 years from now will look very different, and together we can influence those outcomes. We need each other. Together we are the Truth Team, and together we can honor Christ as we exercise our stewardship as believers and citizens. One way to make a difference is to visit pointofview.net and support the Truth Team, pointofview.net. Or give when you call 1-800-347-5151. The nation is so divided, we must be united. Pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Just before we said we had so much information, we couldn't process it anymore. We have, of course, WikiLeaks saying that they're going to now bring phase 3 of all of these emails down. And this, again, is pretty amazing stuff because we have already learned quite a bit from WikiLeaks. We learned some from FBI directors and from other disgruntled FBI agents that have released information information out. We're learning now some from the laptop of Mr. Weiner. That is, again, an individual that was a member of Congress and estranged husband of Huma Abedin. And then we have some more WikiLeaks coming down the pike. I might just mention, too, that you will hear not only individuals saying that this is unprecedented. I think I addressed that issue for just a few minutes. They'll also say that this is illegal, and you had the senator from Nevada, Harry Reid, who is going to be departing, argue that this violates the Hatch Act. Now, the Hatch Act prevents from bureaucrats from actually getting involved in politicking, and there are all sorts of ways to respond to it, but I think Representative Trey Gowdy probably had the best one. He was on with Brett Baier of Fox News the other day, and Brett Baier read the letter from Harry Reid and asked Trey Gowdy for his response. And Trey Gowdy said this, quote, "Well, thank God he's leaving. It's my initial reaction. My second reaction is I didn't know Mormons use drugs. Anybody who is capable of sending out that press release has to be under the influence of something. The person responsible for this fact pattern is Secretary Clinton. James Comey did not tell her to use a private server," unquote. And you have seen some interesting reactions. Up until now, there haven't been too many people that have called for Hillary Clinton to step down. There have been some that have called for Donald Trump to step down. But here you have one today that was in the Chicago Tribune. I guess it was actually over the weekend. I take that back. John Cash, Democrats should ask Clinton to step aside. Has America become so numb, he asked, by the decades of lies and cynicism oozing from Clinton Inc., that it would elect Hillary Clinton as president even after Friday's FBI announcement that had reopened an investigation of her emails while Secretary of State? We'll soon find out enough. He says it's obvious the American political system is breaking down, has been crumbling for some time now, and the establishment elite know it, and they're properly frightened. Donald Trump, the vulgarian at their gates, is a symptom, not a cause. Hillary Clinton and her husband, Bill, are both cause and effect. And he goes on to talk about that for some time. Yesterday, I was actually preaching all three services at Denton Bible Church, and as a matter of fact, on Thursday, we'll have in studio with us a man that has, of course, stirred a little bit of controversy himself because we are talking about these issues from the pulpit in churches, talking about this election and how important this is. And so Tommy Nelson will be with us on Thursday. And, of course, you perhaps have seen, and if you're on Facebook, I'm sure at least one or two people have sent to you either the transcript of his message last Sunday or even the video link. And we'll send mine out, too, if you'd like to see it. I guess Tommy Nelson's on Wednesday, my mistake. But nevertheless, he's going to be with us, and that will be an opportunity to talk through that. But anyway, the point I wanted to get back to is when I was at Denton Bible yesterday, I've just pointed out that when we see this editorial by John Cass, we've got to recognize that this has not always been the case. And the examples I used in the church service yesterday, where you can go back to the 1930s and 40s, and there were millions of homes that had a picture of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in their homes. I mean, such veneration, such respect that the American people had for President Roosevelt. Even in the 1960s, you know, the turbulent 1960s, you could still go into homes and you could see a picture of John F. Kennedy. And even in the 1980s, occasionally I would see a home where it'd have a picture up of Ronald Reagan. And yet when you think about this, we now have an individual writing for, in this case, the Chicago Tribune, calling for the Democrats to come to Hillary Clinton and do what Republicans did for Richard Nixon. You know, as the Watergate scandal unfolded after his election in 1972, it began to be more and more obvious that he was involved, his aides were involved, and so as a result, there came to be a time when Howard Baker and a number of others came to the White House and said, Mr. Nixon, it is time for you to step down. We'll see whether or not any Democrats come to Hillary Clinton and say, you know, with all of this controversy, it's time for you to step down. But we will see. And, of course, a lot of that gets back to what is going to happen in this election. Over the weekend, there were a lot of people that said, you know, it's almost a certainty that Hillary Clinton will win, because if you look at the electoral map, many of the states which were considered to be toss-up states are now no longer toss-up states. And Jim Garrity wrote about this as well, saying that if you even looked at the election map, the electoral map that USA Today puts out, It still has Hillary Clinton with 260 electoral votes, Donald Trump with 180 electoral votes and 95 in the toss-up category. But they point out, and he points out, that that's pretty silly to even have that on the list, because Wisconsin was listed as a toss-up, and Hillary Clinton has never trailed there. You can look at North Carolina as a toss-up, but Hillary Clinton has been leading there. Now, I'd love to hear from some of you in North Carolina. In Florida, listed as a toss-up, but Hillary Clinton led in the last 8 polls. Then if you have Nevada, again, as a toss-up, Hillary Clinton led again in the last 8 polls. So the argument that he was making is that when you look at these maps that get posted, sometimes they tend to list certain states as a toss-up, when really, if indeed the polls have any level of accuracy, and of course that's the big question, questions have already been taken care of. So when you look at the national polls, what's sort of interesting here is that if you look at the ABC Washington Post tracking poll from on the general election, that one has Hillary Clinton up by 2 points. But then if you look at that same poll and actually look at 4 individuals, and most of you live in states where you'll have Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Gary Johnson, and Jill Stein. Some of you might also have a poll, if you're in Utah and a few other places, where you have Emmett McMullen and a few others. But if you look at least those 4, then Hillary Clinton's lead is +1. So you can see that the more realistic poll still shows that some people are going to vote for Gary Johnson. He's at probably 4%. Some are still going to vote for Jill Stein. She's at 2%. And then you have more recently the Los Angeles Times USC tracking poll, and they have Donald Trump up by 4%, which is always a nice way of saying, do we even know what is going to happen on election night? And the answer is, again, Donald Trump is going to have to win a lot of those toss-up states. He's going to have to run the table. You're going to have a near political miracle. But at least it isn't quite as over as we were led to believe a week ago. And then you see this phenomenon in which some states have had an increase in early voting. And those would be states like Texas and Georgia and Arizona, Wisconsin, which I just mentioned a minute ago, Virginia, and Maine. And we have listeners in all of those states. However, the early voting has decreased in these states: California, North Carolina, Ohio, Colorado, Michigan, Iowa, Nevada, Utah, and Alaska. And again, we have listeners in those states as well. So you have to be careful about extrapolating and assuming that the trends that we saw in 2012 are going to play out in 2016. The sampling is going to be the same. There are just a lot of questions left. But again, the assumption is if all of those trends continue, Hillary Clinton becomes the next president. But then the investigation doesn't stop when she's elected as president. And so we'll see how that all plays out. Let's take some phone calls, though. We'll go to South Carolina first, WAGP, and Bruce. Thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you for taking my call. I was wondering if there's been any research done to find out how the votes were cast, or in other words, what party they were cast for, those who are the illicit votes, the dead people voting, the people voting twice, some of these precincts where you have 100+ % of the voting public that can vote there, that kind of thing. Has there been any research done? It would be nice to know the facts regarding that. I think I already know the answer, but, I'll leave it up to you. I thank you for taking my question.
I thank you for asking the question. I'm coming up to a break, but let me give you the short answer and then the longer one after the break. And that is, we've had on this program a couple of times Hans von Spakovsky. I'm hoping we could still get him on Thursday. I know that's a tentative right now, but he can give us an update on some of that. If you go back to the Friday broadcast, I did go through a list of some places where we actually have seen voter fraud, and 2 individuals who have been charged with actually fiddling with the votes. One individual that is now going to be serving time. So some of this happens sort of in the background, and if you didn't listen to Point of View, you wouldn't know about it, but there are some people that have been charged, some have been indicted, some have been prosecuted, and some are either in jail or headed there.
We'll talk more about this right after our important messages.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Everyone seems to be eager to get out of jury duty, but Gursant Singh wanted to serve. Unfortunately, he ran into a problem. Singh, a practicing Sikh, arrived at the Sutter County Courthouse in Yuba City, California, after being summoned for jury duty. There, authorities refused to even let him into the courthouse due to his kirpan. A kirpan is a small, blunt dagger worn by Sikhs at all times as required by their religion. It's usually smaller than many letter openers and equally dull. Of course, court security is not a big fan of bringing potential weapons into the courthouse, blunt or not. But it presented Singh with a dilemma. Singh was quoted in one report as saying of the situation, "I'd rather be arrested than compromise my beliefs." I'm not sure how Singh's case was resolved, if it was resolved, but certainly we can find ways to accommodate the religious beliefs of Sikhs. Federal policy, for instance, currently views kirpans as objects of religious faith, removing them from the category of weapons at over 9,000 areas secured by the Federal Protective Service. The exercise of religion may make some uncomfortable and even present an element of risk. But in the end, we seek to maximize religious liberty because we are endowed by our Creator to pursue our lives and our happiness in religion. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. I mentioned that we'd like to get Hans von Spaskowski on. He's canceled for the regular interview. I'll see if we can tape something and play that for you, because he has put together quite a bit. And even on Friday, I read off just a number of stories that we had collected, and we can maybe put those together in a commentary, which people can find out about. But probably the best illustration of how we need to really begin to shake up the system, and we really need to, after this election, demand that we have more voter integrity, comes from a piece by Robert Knight. Maybe we can get him on, because he has certainly been following this as well. And he asked the question, how many voters do you know who are more than 100 years old, or 110 years old, or how about 126 years old? You know kind of where he's going with this. Hundreds of voters in recent elections in 3 eastern Pennsylvania counties were more than 100 years of age, with many over 110, according to the official voter registration rolls open to the public. The research collected by the group that he works with, the American Civil Rights Union, had some head-shaking surprises. According to the data, one gentleman from Montgomery County, whose birthday was listed as August 7th, 1853, allegedly voted in 2008 at age 155, and in 2012 at age 159. The nation's oldest senior citizen, a woman of New York City, died just last year of 116. So the demographic probability that all of these Pennsylvania voters who clock in at 115 or 116 years of age are probably not legitimate voters. Would you guess? And I think it illustrates exactly why we should be concerned about this, and goes into some of the really significant details about this. We've, of course, talked about what has happened in Colorado and other places where they've begun to find this. But let's focus again on his piece here out of Pennsylvania. He's talking about the fact that in the Pennsylvania data compiled from voter rolls in Philadelphia, Allegheny, and Montgomery counties, hundreds more voters are listed with birth dates of 1/1/1800, which would make them more than 200 years of old. When asked about the 1800 date, officials blamed it on the Y2K problem. Remember that one in 2000? You just cannot make this stuff up. The presence of so many unlikely voters indicates that officials have not kept voter rolls up to date as required by federal law. There's a strong likelihood that similar statistics would turn up in Pennsylvania's other 64 counties. And so based upon this information, the American Civil Rights Union has a lawsuit that would force these election officials to open their books for inspection. And so this is the kind of mischief that takes place. And, of course, we've talked about the fact that we really do need some of you to consider being a poll watcher and just simply sit there and watch what is taking place. But it's difficult, of course, to catch these kinds of problems because somebody comes in and say, I'm Joe Smith, and I live at this address, and nobody looks at the birth date, and they say, well, you look pretty good for somebody who's 154 years of age, but okay, let's give you a ballot and go and vote. And see, this is where this can take place. So this is something that obviously needs to be addressed. And as I've said before, when we have the stories as we've had over these last couple of weeks of voting machines that don't always seem to work right, and of course the argument is always that it's voter error. And this is why I read that one last week from Amarillo, just to point out that they brought over 2 different election officials. So it wasn't voter error, it wasn't a mistake. But obviously, when an individual wanted to vote Republican straight ticket, it clicked over and actually picked Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine. So those are the things you have to pay attention to when you go in. But again, these issues need to be addressed at a more fundamental level, and that is to clean up these voter rolls and to get them to the point where we can actually have certainty of voter integrity. They're less important in elections which are not close. But do you remember how close the election was in 2000? George W. Bush beat Al Gore, won over Al Gore by 537 votes in the state of Florida, and thus got those electoral votes and was able to be the next president. We've had some other very close elections, and of course, as we've pointed out on numerous occasions, that if you look at the number of people who have claimed to have a born-again experience that is meaningful in their life, you have a percentage of those individuals who simply don't vote. 39 million do not vote in the last election. Back in 2012, there were 13 million born-again Christians who were not registered to vote, and then 26 million who were registered to vote who did not vote. And so when you recognize that in the last election, Barack Obama actually won by less than 5 million votes over Mitt Romney, and you look at 26 million that did not vote and another 13 million that did not register to vote, would they have changed that election? You go back to George W. Bush when he was running for re-election in 2004, he won by 3 million votes over John Kerry. You can see that even when we talk about national elections, presidential elections, we're still only talking about a few million. And when you talk about senatorial elections, congressional elections, and legislative elections, we're talking about even fewer. So this is why this issue of voter fraud is still a great concern. So we'll see if I can maybe tape an interview with Hans von Spakovsky and give us a little bit of an update on what's taking place there as well. We again know that Phase 3 of the WikiLeaks is coming down as well. And one other point I thought I would mention is we are now seeing an incredible deluge of illegal aliens coming across the border. A week ago last Sunday, I reported on this program, and I'm not the only one because it was Scott Pelley at CBS that actually broke the story initially, of over 1,000 people crossed over the Rio Grande River last Sunday, a week ago Sunday, coming into McAllen, turned themselves in, had ankle monitors placed on their ankles, then wanted to actually receive asylum. And they were being told by the various individuals that were gathering them up and bringing them, in some cases from Guatemala and El Salvador, and of course Mexico as well, that they needed to get over now because Hillary Clinton wanted to provide a path for citizenship, so they need to get in now to qualify. And then number two, also telling them that if Donald Trump was elected, that a wall would be constructed and they would not be able to get into this country at all. And so you can see that when we talk about some of these issues of the 2016 election, they're also having a profound impact on this deluge of illegal aliens crossing our borders right now. So if you don't think that some of these policies, some of these pronouncements, even the platforms, the Democratic platform and the Republican platform don't matter, just look at what's happening at our border right now. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some really important issues: how to block terror funding, how to bankrupt terrorists and other terrorist organizations, as we talk with an individual that has been representing hundreds of terror victims. Just a great opportunity for you to hear from her. And again, you can listen to the program. Of course, she'll be in studio, so you can watch it as well. And you can find out more about this organization, about what she's doing, by going to our website, pointofview.net. Don't forget that I also have a commentary today on Halloween, in case you'd like to get that one. We have some take action items, a video or two, and I would also encourage you to check out our cruise to Alaska, which will take place next August. Penna Dexter will be with me. Kelly Shackelford will be with me. Our families will be with us, and it'll be kind of like a Friday weekend edition for an entire week, and I am looking forward to it, and I know you will be as well. So check that out. As you go to the website, don't forget that we, during this election season, find that giving drops off significantly. So if you can click on that button that says Donate Now, we would appreciate it so very much. Giving has dropped. We have seen it happen every 4 years. It's happened again, and so that's why we encourage you to go to the website, pointofview.net. And if you find yourself saying, I learned a few things today just as I listened to the broadcast, can you think about what you might do to support this ministry? I know we would greatly appreciate it. Let's take a break. We're going to find out how to fight the war on terror and how to support terror victims. All that coming up right after this.
Modern life is go, 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 and Point of View is absolutely ready to go with you. I dare say that most of us have access to either a smartphone or a tablet, maybe even a computer that is app-based. There's a new way to keep up with Kerby and the team, the free Point of View radio app. With quick links to listen to the program live, to keep up and share Kerby's meaty and insightful viewpoints, commentaries, read articles on issues we're talking about that impact you and your family. Did you know you can also watch the show? Yes, radio with cameras. You can access that through the app as well. There's a link to our action alerts, how to find us on the radio across the nation, ways to contact us, and so much more. Visit your app store, iTunes or Google Play. Search for the Point of View radio app. There's no reason not to take us with you. The free Point of View radio app, available now for Apple and Android devices. And when you get it loaded, there's one more button I'd like you to press, the one that says Donate Now. Join Truth Team 360. Support us financially as we support you with the truth that you need. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour, we're going to spend some time talking about two issues that we address so often here on Point of View. One is Israel and our love for Israel, but also the fight against terror. And I think you're going to appreciate this conversation. We have a guest in studio who not only can listen to the broadcast, but if you'd like to watch it, or maybe even send it to some individuals a little bit later so that they could watch it or listen to it, please feel free to do so. In studio with us today is Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, and she is an attorney from Israel, an individual with a law degree as well as an MBA from Manchester University, a mother, and perhaps many people say the undisputed leader in the fight against Palestinian Islamic terrorist organizations. She represents hundreds of terror victims and was chosen as one of the 50 most influential women in Israel by Forbes magazine, to mention just a little bit. If you'd like to know more about her, we have a link to our website, and we have her bio. We have an article by her that will give you some understanding, and, of course, a link to her website. So, Nitsana, thank you for joining us in studio today.
Thank you for hosting me. Pleasure to be here.
Let's, if we can, maybe talk about how you got involved in this activity. You could be raising kids, and even though you have a law degree, how in the world did you end up...
Don't ask. That was like... as a law student, I already started filing lawsuits, pro bono cases against, on behalf of victims, all kind of victims. And one of them was against a terrorist, a major one, that wanted to come to Israel, and we thought that he should not be coming to Israel. Anyway, to make a long story short, we filed a petition in the High Court of Justice in Israel, which is the Supreme Court of Israel. Mm-hmm. And something for a law student to do, it's at the top of the profession. We filed this petition. We lost it, but the position, the event, this landmark point of view showed me that I can come to court on behalf of victims, especially on behalf of terror victims, get my day in court, and may even win justice for them. So the Intifada broke out in the year of 2000, when the blood was spilled on the streets in Israel. I thought that as a lawyer, we can play a role in the war against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best, go after the pocketbooks of the terror organizations. Because money, we realized, is the oxygen to the terrorism. If you block the flow of the money, you can block the flow of the terrorism. So we started filing lawsuits against Hamas, against Islamic Jihad, against PLO, against Iran, against Syria, in Israel and the United States, utilizing special laws. And after 2 years, we won judgments in our favors and decisions, $180 million against Iran, 64 million shekels, lien on the Palestinian Authority's money. And then we got flooded with phone calls of terror victims that wanted us to represent them in court. We established Shurat HaDin, Israel Law Center. It's a non-profit organization to take all these cases to court. And this is what we're doing since then.
Sure. And again, if you'd like to know a little bit more about the Shurat HaDin Israeli Law Center, we have a link to that on our website. And this is, I think, an encouragement, because we have said before that the war on terror happens at a number of different levels. One is militarily, whether it's the IDF or whether it's Homeland Security, whether it's the Defense Department of the United States, whatever. Then there's the ideological battle, which we've talked about as well in terms of delegitimizing some of these terrorist ideas. But one that we've only mentioned occasionally, but we have talked about with other people in the United States, is how to cut off the flow of funds. And so you found a way that not only can you represent and help terror victims, but you can begin to actually block the funds necessary for Hamas and other groups to actually carry out their terrorist activities.
Right. This is done by actual lawsuits against them. And now you may ask, how can you go after a terror organization? Yes. How can you, serve them with a paper? How can you find their address? They're not in yellow pages. What do you do?
Right. Yes, I wanted to get to that.
But you can by serving their representatives, by serving their militants who are sitting in jail sometimes. Sometimes you can even locate them in their own neighborhood, especially in Gaza, which everything is open and known. And then you can win a case against them. Even though they don't show up in court, you can win a case against them if there is jurisdiction. Once we have a case, once we have a judgment against them for hundreds of millions of dollars, you go and collect it against their assets. And they have assets, they have bank accounts, they have real estate. We were able to go after Iranian funds, after Syrian funds, after even Hamas funds, enforcing our judgment against different assets, and we were able to collect $200 million so far on behalf of the terror victims.
Now, when it goes to the victims, how does that is that distributed? Because a lot of people say, well, this is great that you can do that, but then the victims benefit from that as well, from the judgment?
Only the victims benefit from that because these are the plaintiffs. They are the players in these lawsuits. Without the victims, you cannot bring any lawsuit. No damage occurred to an organization or human rights organization. It's only on behalf of the victims. And when you win the judgment, the victims receive the funds. And again, funds or any money cannot bring back life.
Right.
They cannot even attach a broken leg to its place. But it is a measure of justice. It gives them a closure, understanding, knowing, realizing that there is someone out there that's looking for them and make sure that they receive justice.
Very good. I know that you're in the Dallas area, so I might just mention for many of our listeners, they won't be able to have you speak, but for people that would like to actually get a chance to meet you and hear more about that, tell us about what you're in Dallas for and what you'll be doing around the United States and other places.
So I was just one of the recipients of the awards in CUFI, Christian United for Israel. This was San Antonio. Today I am in Dallas speaking in different engagements. Tomorrow I'll be speaking in the Galleria Hotel in Dallas. I guess if you go on our website, you can still have some seats available. Welcome everybody to come.
And again, I would encourage those that are in the Dallas area to attend. And then when we come back, I want to talk about some of the stories because I know you have a lot of these stories. But again, this is probably new to a lot of you. We've talked about before what those people in Israel are facing right now. Those of you that have been with us on a tour to Israel or to Israel and Greece, as you've been able to attend and go there and see what indeed they are facing. But also, we've talked a great deal about terrorism and how this is a battle on a number of fronts. Certainly, the military battle is one we talk about quite often. And oftentimes, we talk about the philosophical battle of radical Islam. And we've also mentioned how this can be a very effective way to block the terrorist funding, which in many ways will block terrorism. So if you'd like to join the conversation, we're going to continue our conversation with Nitsana. But also, since the phone calls are ringing, I might as well open up the phones. 1-800-351-1212. We'll take a break and come back and tell you a few stories, but a little bit later, if you'd like to join our conversation, maybe you have some thoughts and questions as well about the war on terror, how to fight that, what is the most effective way, and maybe would like to know a little bit more about how you can support organizations like this that are standing and representing the victims and also blocking the funding of terrorists. We've got a lot more to talk about. We'll do that right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Today is October 31st, and most people know it as Halloween, but it also has long been known as the Festival of the Dead. The Celtic tribes and their priests, the Druids, celebrated this day as a marker for the change from life to death. November 1st was the beginning of the new year, so Halloween or Samhain was like New Year's Eve. It was both a time of death and new beginnings. The young would wander the countryside disguised in scary masks, carrying turnips carved into scary jack-o'-lanterns to frighten off ghosts and goblins. They believed that the veil between the living and the dead was believed to be the thinnest at this time of year, and therefore one could more readily communicate with a loved one in spirit. I might mention that Deuteronomy 18 warns us not to be involved in any activity that includes divination. The term Halloween is shortened from All Hallows Even, as it was the evening before All Hallows Day, also known as All Saints' Day. Pope Gregory moved the day from May 13th to November 1st. This made Halloween the eve of the celebration. November 1st was All Hallows Mass, and October 31st became All Hallows Even. Today, Halloween has become one of the most celebrated holidays. We're told that people spend more on decorations at Halloween than any other holiday except Christmas. And often the Halloween celebrations have included more and more occultic activity. Christians have two options: to ignore Halloween or to provide an alternative. I might mention that many churches now provide a fall fun festival. So I hope you will think about what you will do today. Don't just go with the flow. Make an informed decision about what you'll do on Halloween. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
How can we fight the war on terror, and how can we support those individuals that have been victims of terrorist actions? That's what we're talking about today. Nitsana's in studio with us, and if you'd like to join the conversation, let me open up the phones, 1-800-351-1212, and you can listen to this. Also, you can watch it because, again, we have an opportunity when you go to our website. It says watch or listen now, and, of course, we'll also put this on our YouTube channel so you can watch it later or even send the podcast to some others. It's something I think you really need to know about. And so, Nitsana, let's, if we can, talk a little bit more about the Law Center and the way in which you find those victims and how you actually support them in a court of law.
Okay, so, we need to find the victims first and for all. We need to know who is responsible for the terror attack, that they got injured or lost their loved ones. And unfortunately, in Israel, in the past 16 years, we have too many of them.
Yes.
And so in the beginning of the Intifada, a lot of the attacks were supported by the Palestinian Authority. They were directed by it. They were initiated by its employees, Palestinian policemen, Palestinian security men. So we have a bunch of cases against the Palestinian Authority in the federal courts in the United States on behalf of terror victims that got killed, injured by in these terror attacks. We also have cases against Iran and against Syria. Every time Hamas carries out attack, or Islamic Jihad or Hezbollah, we can file lawsuits against Iran and Syria, which don't have sovereign immunity in the United States.
See, okay.
Cases going on in the Federal District Court of Washington. And we have cases against banks that provide financial services to terror organizations. Cases like Arab Bank, like Bank of China, LCB, Lebanese Canadian Bank, UBS, American Express Bank, banks that in the course of maybe 10 years during the Intifada, bluntly, openly funded the terror organizations and their front organizations. Even if you give money to a charity that identifies the terror organization, you're still in charge with aiding and abetting terrorism. And recently, we filed cases against the social media because the incitement to kill Jews or to kill innocent civilians around the world is taking a major place in the social media. And we saw it in the past wave of terrorism in Israel, where hundreds or thousands of posts were teaching people how to kill Jews, how to stab with knife, how to twist the knife, what type of poison to put on the knife before you go and kill. And then you see the terrorists themselves, which are teenagers, 16, 17 years old, that all they do is like play with the social media, go and post that they are going to become shaheed, they are going to become martyrs. It's time to open a third intifada. And after they go and stab, you will find thousands of posts endorsing their acts, glorifying it, for asking others to follow them. So all this incitement, it's going on mainly in Facebook, because Facebook is most popular social network media among the Palestinians, cause the last wave of terrorism. So we have an injunction against Facebook. We have a lawsuit against Facebook for $1 billion on behalf of terror victims. And the next in line will be Twitter and YouTube. You have to stop this aiding and abetting terrorism that's going on freely and openly in the social media.
Now, in some cases, you may not understand. You might say, well, there's a terrorist act, but I'm not sure Hamas or Hezbollah actually claimed responsibility. Can you do investigation to begin to figure that out?
Yes. And it's a great question, because it is indeed a very difficult area. How can you really prove? Most of the attacks or the suicide attacks, the attacker disappears, right? He dies. Then you have to track his followers, or those who helped him or those who assisted him. So we go and check all the police files. And if there are some people who got indicted as a result of the attack, so the military courts, and we have access to this evidence. And in the end, we utilize and get the assistance of experts, terror experts, former intelligence officers that come and write an expert report why they think this attack was conducted by this specific terror organization, or why they think this specific country, Syria, Iran, North Korea sometimes, is responsible for the attack. And with all this ammunition, we go to court.
Fancy. Again, we're talking with Nitsana, and if you'd like to know a little bit more about the Shurat HaDin Israeli Law Center, we have information about that on our website. And again, we encourage your phone calls if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. You mentioned something that in passing might be worth mentioning a little bit more, and that is that you lose the perpetrator, as we call them in the United States, the suicide bomber. Really the homicide bomber, if you will.
Right.
Talk about what some of these people are facing, because they're in a restaurant, they're in a theater, they're walking down the street, and somebody comes up to them and blows themselves up. What kind of attacks are you seeing right now in Israel, and what are some of the individuals that you've had to defend who have faced some of these horrific acts?
I can tell you the story about Jonathan Bauer, who's a little kid, 7 years old, that was walking one day with his father, holding his father's arm in the street in Jerusalem. They just came back from an afternoon class, so were heading home, and towards them was a big, wide-shouldered man. And the man was walking just towards them. And they didn't know back then that the man is a Palestinian policeman who's carrying an explosive vest. They also didn't know that in the vest there are bolts and pins and
sometimes use ball bearings.
medals.
And,
Everything he could have put in his vest. And the man looked at Jonathan's eyes and blew himself up. These are the type of incidents. This is the type of terror attacks we are litigating, we are facing. The suicide bomber, obviously, was killed. But after investigating, we found out that he was a Palestinian policeman who his family receives compensations until today from the Palestinian Authority, get their support. So there is no question the Palestinian Authority is responsible for this attack, and there is a case going on in the Federal District Court in New York against them. Other type of terrorism is what we testified today in Israel. Stabbing attacks, like people walking down the street, they cannot walk without looking back because somebody can attack them in the back. And a lot of victims got killed. Actually, one of them is Taylor Force, an American student that came to Israel on a tour, non-Jew, that got killed as a result of this stabbing. So these cases are also cases we're litigating in court. Drive-by shooting, you drive your car, and there is another car going just next to you, and sometimes there is a car in front of you, it goes too slow, you try to go around it, and somebody opens fire from the car. And we have another sort of terrorism, kidnapping. You know, the story of the 3 teenagers that were kidnapped in Israel, and a horrible attack done by Hamas. Unfortunately, there is no end for terror attacks, but our activity is not unique only to Israel. We represent a lot of victims from the United States or from other places that got killed in worldwide terror attacks, like the one in Paris, the one in Brussels, the one in Istanbul. Fortunately or not unfortunately, terrorism is not a local problem of Israel. It became too global, and our organization, Shurat HaDin, is spreading all over the world to fight it.
Going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll take some of your phone calls, 1-800-351-1212. Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, and again with the Shurat HaDin Israel Law Center. And I might just mention for those of you in Dallas that tomorrow night, that'd be Tuesday night, November 1st, in the evening at the Western Galleria, an opportunity for you to hear her and to join them for a light dinner. And we have information about that on the website. That is at pointofview.net, which links to their website, and we'll give you some more information. If you'd like to join us, again, 1-800-351-1212. When we come back, maybe we'll talk a little bit about how they fund some of these ideas. You know, you've heard Saddam Hussein and the Palestinian Authority and others that have provided some of those funds, and that is, again, just one more stark look at what terrorist actions are taking place worldwide, but especially in Israel. So we'll continue that conversation with Nitsana and with you right after these important messages.
Imagine it's January 2021. The president elected in 2016 has served 4 years. Tell me, what does the Supreme Court look like with maybe 2, 3, even 4 justices named by this next resident of the Oval Office? Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? Depending on the results in November, 4 years from now will look very different, and together we can influence those outcomes. We need each other. Together we are the Truth Team, and together we can honor Christ as we exercise our stewardship as believers and citizens. One way to make a difference is to visit pointofview.net and support the Truth Team, pointofview.net. Or give when you call 1-800-347-5151. The nation is so divided, we must be united. Pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour open line if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. In studio with us today, Nitsana Darshan-Leitner. And again, this is part of the Shurat HaDin Israel Law Center. And if you would like to join the conversation, we'd love to hear from you at 1-800-351-1212. Might mention again, for those of you in the Dallas area, if tomorrow night you would like to meet her or find out more about what they're doing, again, this will be taking place Tuesday night, November 1st. It'll be in the Westin Galleria. If you'd like to write to someone and get some more information, you can contact Next Generation. And that is Dr. Tim Shepard at gmail.com. Dr. Tim Shepard at gmail.com. We also have some of that information on our website. And if you'd like to meet some of those individuals, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd also love to hear from those of you that maybe have been to Israel or have a heart for Israel, or maybe are like us, wondering what we can do to fight this war on terror. And Nitsana, just a minute ago, you mentioned something that we've paid attention to, and that is when Saddam Hussein was in power, sometimes he would pay families of a suicide bomber. The Palestinian Authority has done that as well. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? Because that may be new information for some of our listeners.
Absolutely. Look, during the Intifada, it's very, very known that both Saddam Hussein and the Palestinian Authority and Saudi Arabia funded the families of the suicide bombers and funded the terrorists. In the course of our cases, we found pages, instructions by Yasser Arafat instructing people to pay the terrorists according to the terror attack that they carried out.
Wow.
Give compensations. We found out documents of from the Arab Bank illustrating how they're going and raising the funds to pay the families of the suicide bombers, calling the people to come and collect their funds. Saddam Hussein was one of the figures that publicly announced that he's going to fund the families of the suicide bombers. And the matter is that this type of compensations, encouraging the terrorists and encouraging others to go and carry out terror attacks. This is incentive that they give to the terrorists, because a lot of people in Judea and Samaria, in Gaza, simply think that, my life sucks. If I go and carry this attack, my family will be taken care of. They will get so much money, and we're talking about a lot of money in relation to what they get in this type of areas, that it's worthwhile to go and just finish my life. So every time there is an institution that helps with this type of monetary support, we are suing them in court. And indeed, we got $2 billion in judgments against those entities, against banks, against countries, against terror organizations, against those who provide material support to the terrorism.
You talked about the incentives. Let's talk about that. One is financial incentive. If I'm a teenage boy and I'm in Gaza, I'm in Judea, Samaria, I'm in the so-called West Bank, wherever, and the economic opportunities are slim and none, that's one incentive. But then if you've grown up studying in a madrasas and you have been told that when you die, not only will you provide the funds for your family, but you will be surrounded by virgins in heaven, and that you will be guaranteed salvation because you died in a holy jihad, that's another very significant incentive, isn't it?
Absolutely. And people really believe in that, and people really go and follow that. And not only that, like the ideological reasons are, do not end with the 72 virgins. They go into the matter that Israel should not exist, that the Western world doesn't have a right to be there, that Islam is the right religion and it should take over the world. So you see it in small measures in Israel when Hamas is trying to spread the propaganda and to enforce it by terrorism. But you see it with ISIS taking over just in spreading Islam, radical Islam. And their way to impose a religion and their way to convey to people that this is the best religion is by terrorism, is by terror attacks. And one of the ways, obviously, to stop this phenomenon is to stop the ideological background, is to come but you can't really do it.
Yes.
You can't really do it.
But you were even talking about that idea that they don't have right to the land. I mean, we've talked about this before, that for a while there was a map that the Palestinian Authority had on their website, and there's no place for Israel. It's just all Palestinian. And again, you have this mindset that these are interlopers. The Jews do not belong in the land. This is land that was claimed for Islam. And so as a result, that again is another one of those incentives, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you know what? It doesn't end there, because the Palestinians are using it as a threat against Israel in the International Criminal Court. They come and say, since this is not your land, especially not Judea and Samaria, that you took over from us. I don't know whether it went before 67, but whatever.
Yes.
This is a crime. This is an international crime, because building settlements in territories that don't belong to you, that you are occupying, violates the international law, violates the Geneva Convention. And they keep threatening Israel to go to the international court and file war complaints against Israel. And I tell you the truth, Israel has a major problem with this issue, because in the end of the day, Israel will claim that the territories are not occupied, right? Because in order to occupy territory, you have to take it from someone who owns the last one to have any rights on them were the Turks. And then Britain came and got the mandate to administrate them, but it was only mandate to administrate. They didn't have any ownership rights. And then there was a war, which ended in the Green Line. So again, nobody got any ownership rights. And in 67, when Israel took it over, nobody owned this land. So the most you can say about this land is that it's disputed land, but it's not occupied. But the court has different opinion. The court does agree with the Palestinians that this is an occupied territory. And if the Palestinians will go and file war complaint against Israel based on this allegation, Israel will lose. And that will be a game changer.
Let's talk a little bit about what you do at the Law Center there in terms of defending Israel, because, you know, you're talking about the International Court, you're talking about The Hague, you're talking about it seems like all the European countries against Israel right now. So you're defending Israel. You're also defending Israel against war crimes. And that's another part of that. So explain how that fits.
In this specific case, for instance, we were brainstorming what can we do, and we realized that Israel is not the only country in the world to be blamed for occupying territories.
True.
Turkey occupies northern Cyprus. Morocco occupies Western Sahara. Russia occupies Georgia. So we went and filed a war complaint against Turkey for building in northern Cyprus. And on 30 pages long brief, we detail what Turkey is doing in northern Cyprus, how they build houses, universities, hospitals, how they give tax incentives to their population to come and settle in northern Cyprus. Exactly what Israel is doing in the West Bank. Now, the court will not find Turkey liable for war crimes, in charge of war crimes. Turkey is too dear to Europe. So they may say that it's not an issue that the court can get involved with. It's for the countries to resolve it among each others. That will create a precedent. When the Palestinians will come and file their war complaint against Israel, the hands of the court will be tied. There will be a precedent saying that the court is not getting involved in such type of issues. So you need a little bit of creativity, a little thinking out of the box in order to fight your enemies.
That is amazing. Again, file this against Turkey, or of course you could do Russia or a number of other places.
Absolutely, they're the next.
Yeah, that was next, and so that does put you in that good situation. We need to take a break, but let me just mention that if you find yourself saying, oh, this is fascinating, I didn't know about a lot of this material, we do have a link to the website. You can go to israellawcenter.org, or just if you can't type all that out, we have the link there. And you'll see that there is material that is already there on blocking terror funding. We put that as a separate article, defending Israel from war crimes, combating lawfare, and some of the other issues that we'll talk about in just a minute. Also, a worldwide campaign to prosecute the heads of the Palestinian television in The Hague, which we can get into in just a minute. And you can learn more about some of the things happening against Facebook, and all the material that you would like to know is available on our website, pointofview.net. We'll come back and finish our conversation with Nitsana today. But again, if any of you would like to join the conversation, feel free to do so. And again, there are some great resources that we've posted on the website. So take the time to go to the website, and we'll talk about how you can support them in prayer and finances. And I would also encourage you to take a few of the articles, one of which we've posted here on blocking terror funding, and click that share button. Maybe put it on your Facebook page or send it to someone else. Get them thinking about this. This might be a whole area of investigation and even defense that most people didn't know about. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Everyone seems to be eager to get out of jury duty, but Gursant Singh wanted to serve. Unfortunately, he ran into a problem. Singh, a practicing Sikh, arrived at the Sutter County Courthouse in Yuba City, California after being summoned for jury duty. There, authorities refused to even let him into the courthouse due to his kirpan. A kirpan is a small, blunt dagger worn by Sikhs at all times as required by their religion. It's usually smaller than many letter openers and equally dull. Of course, court security is not a big fan of bringing potential weapons into the courthouse, blunt or not. But it presented Singh with a dilemma. Singh was quoted in one report as saying of the situation, "I'd rather be arrested than compromise my beliefs." I'm not sure how Singh's case was resolved, if it was resolved, but certainly we can find ways to accommodate the religious beliefs of Sikhs. Federal policy, for instance, currently views kirpans as objects of religious faith, removing them from the category of weapons at over 9,000 areas secured by the Federal Protective Service. The exercise of religion may make some uncomfortable and even present an element of risk. But in the end, we seek to maximize religious liberty because we are endowed by our Creator to pursue our lives and our happiness in religion. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes, and if you'd like to know a little bit more about this organization, which we've found out about and thought you should know as well, you can go to israellawcenter.org. And Nitsana, for just a few minutes, let's talk about all the resources that are there. I mentioned just a minute ago the article that we posted on blocking terror funding. I really would encourage people to take that article or some of the others and hit the share button, put it on their Facebook page, start a conversation. Defending Israel from war crimes. We'll talk about lawfare in just a minute, and then the campaign, some of the things that you've done with Facebook and the Palestinian television and the rest. But as people go there, you can sign up for a newsletter. You can hit the like button.
Right.
Talk about what they can do.
Right. So first and foremost, they can join our missions. We run missions to Israel. You mentioned one, but we run them twice a year. Very special missions. Mossad agents, Shin Bet officials, something that you do on a regular basis. You go to the border in Gaza, you go to the Lebanese border, Syrian border, you go and watch a trial of a Hamas terrorist in the military court. Fascinating mission.
Mm-hmm.
Go on our website, israellawcenter.org, and get the details. We also have a Facebook page. Please join our page. And right now, I think this interview is getting streamed live on our Facebook page. Go and like it, share it. It will spread all over. We already had like 1,000 of them watching them.
That's great.
We have seminars for lawyers and
we do
internship
have
program
law
for law
students listening to this. So could they do an internship
Absolutely.
with you or something
We have
like that?
internship twice a year in the summer, in the winter break. They can come and join us, help us, and we help them. We take them on mini missions. So what I mentioned before, we take them, the law students as well. It's great. We have seminar for lawyers. We have conferences, again, all on our website, israellawcenter.org. And to support all this infrastructure, we need funds. So whoever wants to help us fight the terrorists, fight on behalf of the Jewish state, fight those who want to kill us, please support Shurat HaDin. There is a donation button to go and make a donation and to be our partner in the fight against terrorism.
So again, if they do that in the United States, could they get a tax
Yes,
exempt?
there is a
'Cause
tax
they may,
exempt.
They may just wonder if they have to send it to Israel or something
Absolutely.
in shekels or something.
No.
Okay.
It's a U.S. tax deductible donation, and they get a tax receipt.
So again, you got some of those resources. And talk for just a minute, since we were talking about social media a minute ago, I mean, you really are fighting Facebook, and that is a challenge because a lot of us have understood that part of the problem, even with homegrown terrorism here in the United States, is those who go on, whether it's Facebook or other social media, and you're really using the internet. The terrorists are using the internet to recruit terrorists in Israel, in the United States, in Europe. And so it seems to me that as much as I believe in free speech, cutting down or eliminating the way in which we're recruiting these potential jihadists is something we should be involved in.
100%. I'll ask you a question. If you were a designated terror organization, just hypothetical question.
Yes.
Were you allowed to open a bank account in the United States?
You would think you would not be, but you're going to give me an answer here.
So how are you allowed to open a page in Facebook?
Yes.
How are you allowed to open an account on Twitter? How can you have a channel on YouTube? That doesn't make sense because the American law prohibits anyone, any American citizen or American company, and YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter are American companies, to provide material support, to provide any type of services to a designated terror organization. ISIS, Hamas, Islamic Jihad are designated terror organization. You, by law, are prohibited from providing them with these services. And look what they do with your services. You open a platform for them to go and recruit militants, recruit funds, to go and spread their propaganda. How people, for instance, in Switzerland, in Austria, would know even about ISIS? How would they know about the option to go walk all the way to Turkey, cross the border to Syria and Iraq, and join their militaries there, if not from YouTube? And you know what YouTube does? When YouTube shows these beheading videos, who gets like millions of views, they charge, they get ISIS to pay for promotions. So YouTube actually makes money of these beheading videos. This is something unbelievable. You cannot show these videos on CNN, right? You cannot put an ad recruiting militants on New York Times. So why are you allowed to do it on the social media?
Very good. And I've pointed out, too, that it used to be that if you wanted to be a jihadist, if you wanted to join a terrorist organization, you'd have to figure out how to get from this country or whatever country. We'll use the United States, but we could use Israel or anywhere else. Going to a third world country, You'd have to endure all the hardships there. You'd have to learn another language. You'd have to be inculcated into the culture and eventually learn whatever you were going to be learning, and then eventually make your way back to that country to fight a terrorist action. Now you can be sitting at a computer and being radicalized right there in the United States or in Israel or France or Belgium or wherever we might be talking about. And so again, it just doesn't make sense that we allow
social media just made the whole world very tiny, very small. You don't have to get up of your chair in order to be a terrorist and to know and to be trained to be a terrorist. This is something that did not happen before. It wasn't available before.
But again, as we've pointed out, this is a way not only to represent these hundreds of terror victims, but also to figure out a way to block some of the funding for terrorism.
Right, so as a result of our cases, the banks no longer agree to open bank accounts to designated terror organization. They don't even agree to open bank accounts to Islamic charities without making sure that their money is not going to designated terror organization. And they don't agree to open branches or to facilitate intersection in terror zones like Gaza, like South Lebanon. There is no international banking in these areas. And this makes the terror organization, this gives them a very, very hard time because Hamas, for instance, in Gaza has to bring hundreds of millions of Gaza into the Gaza Strip. So they used to do it in tons, but there is a limit to how much you can bring in suitcases. They need the banking system. And without the banking system, they will go bankrupt. And look at ISIS, for instance. ISIS, after you blew up their oil fields, you cut their income, they are not as strong as they used to be because cutting the funding is cutting into the terrorism. You stop the flow of the money, you can stop the flow of the terrorism.
And again, as we've talked about, fighting terrorism, some is military, some is ideological and theological, and some of it is sheer financial. And so again, wanted you to know about this organization. Just before we go, again, people can go to your Facebook page, they can go to your website. Some of you potential lawyers out there, some of you law students, if you'd like to be doing an internship or you'd like to join a mission, it's all very available. And again, if you click on her picture, you will see that we have a link to certainly the israellawcenter.org. We have an article there as well, and my assignment to you is not only to read some of that, but to post it on your Facebook page and start a conversation so that even other people that didn't have a chance to hear this interview will hear it as well. If you'd like to listen to it again, you can click on that button that says listen, and that will give you a chance to get the podcast. If you'd like to watch it, of course, you can go to our YouTube channel. And Nitsana, thank you for being with us today, and I wish you well in all the speaking that you're doing over the next couple of weeks.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you in studio. Again, all of it available at our website, pointofview.net. Had some comments the first hour about the FBI investigation, some articles that we've posted about Clinton Inc. and more issues that we'll be talking about tomorrow. But if you'd like to know more about this idea of blocking terror funding, representing hundreds of terror victims, it's all at our website, pointofview.net. As you go there, I would also encourage you to click on the button that says Pray, Organize, and Vote if you haven't collected the material so that you can make wise decisions about the election. That is there, and perhaps you've already voted. After all, 22 million people have voted already. Take that information, pass it on to others that have not. And again, it's all available at our website, pointofview.net. Click on the button that says Donate. We would certainly appreciate your financial support. And I want to thank Andrew, Catherine, and Shamila for their help behind the scenes. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Modern life is go, 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 and Point of View is absolutely ready to go with you. I dare say that most of us have access to either a smartphone or a tablet, maybe even a computer that is app-based. There's a new way to keep up with Kerby and the team, the free Point of View radio app. With quick links to listen to the program live, to keep up and share Kerby's meaty and insightful viewpoints, commentaries, read articles on issues we're talking about that impact you and your family. Did you know you can also watch the show? Yes, radio with cameras. You can access that through the app as well. There's a link to our action alerts, how to find us on the radio across the nation, ways to contact us, and so much more. Visit your app store, iTunes or Google Play. Search for the Point of View radio app. There's no reason not to take us with you. The free Point of View radio app, available now for Apple and Android devices. And when you get it loaded, There's one more button I'd like you to press, the one that says Donate Now. Join Truth Team 360. Support us financially as we support you with the truth that you need. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.